Welcome to another episode of Tomes and Tunes. I am your host, Arielle Silver, and I am based in Los Angeles. Today, my guest for episode 42 is Nikki O'Neill. She was in Los Angeles, but we actually didn't meet until after she moved to Chicago. I am very excited to have her on the show today. She is also a writer and a musician like I am, so that's really fun, and a wicked good guitar player, as we would say in Boston. Let me bring Nikki in and say hi in the chat box if you are tuning in. Hi, Nikki.
Hi.
It's so fun how some of the best conversations happen behind the scenes before we even start the show. And the last half hour of chatting with you was really awesome. But here we are. Thank you for being on the show. You recently moved to Chicago from Los Angeles.
Yeah, we did. It was in the works for many years. My husband's a musician, like me, he's a drummer. Thus the drum kit right behind here. We loved Southern California. We loved the weather. We loved the community of musicians, and especially in the last couple of years, many of the artists that I befriended. And it was awesome, but we knew that we probably need to move to Chicago, where my husband's parents are from. It was kind of in the cards. It was just not a matter of if, but when. And then when COVID happened, that kind of gave us a push to do the move. And also we were hoping that we could get a house that's more affordable, where we could have a music room, a craft room, and
a craft room.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
What kind of crafts would you do in a craft room?
Oh gosh, the stuff that I hope I can do when I retire. Sewing,
like
sculpture.
Okay.
Yeah, watercolor painting. I used to paint before I did music and writing. I thought I was going to be a painter. I was in a visual arts program for a year, and then I saw the music students practice, and I just loved the community and that they were creating together, as opposed to painting, which is pretty lonely. So I got into music, but I kind of like, yeah.
Did you not play? So was that in college?
No, that was, so I grew up in Sweden. I was born in Los Angeles, but my mom remarried with a Swedish guy, and we moved to Stockholm. And I spent, many years there. So I went to elementary school, high school, and parts of university there as well. There was a high school program, and so they had theater, they had music, they had visual arts. And I was in the visual arts program for a year, and then I auditioned for the music program, and I played a bit of guitar before, so I was hooked on music. But just seeing these music students perform, play for an audience every Friday in our auditorium, and to watch their rehearsals for this, and see them in the hallways, and they'll practice drum rudiments, or you hear violins, and it was just so exciting to me. So it became music, and I haven't really looked back. But I always think that one day when I retire, then I'll pick up painting again, and sculpture and things like that.
Were you mostly watercolor, or did you have a preference? You mentioned watercolor a few minutes ago.
Yeah, I was really into drawing, and I got into watercolor. Oil, I just I never understood it. It's, I don't know, I don't understand how to work the paints, and it takes a long time for it to dry. Watercolor, though, it's kind of daunting. You have to really know what you're doing and commit, because yeah,
Yeah, I
it's
did.
kind of hard to correct it, but I just love how the colors, there's like one color shining through another one, and there are those layers, and I just think I like that impressionistic kind of thing. That
Yeah,
watercolor.
watercolors and oils are water and oil. They
Yeah.
they're so different, and I have never understood watercolor. I am not much of a painter, but in college I was trying to I was trying to squeak through the cracks, or slip through the cracks, I guess. I was not allowed when I went to college, I was not allowed to study music or literature, which are the two things that I wanted to study.
Oh man.
Yeah, my parents wanted me to be a doctor, and so the sciences were, where they really wanted me to end up, and it was very confusing. And what I really wanted to be studying was, something expressive, something with language, a language. I guess everything has a language of some sort, but
But yeah, more creative.
yeah, but my way of kind of satisfying myself within the parameters was that I ended up taking a few classes at the art studio on campus, and I took some drawing and sculpture and painting classes. And during that time, it was the first time in my life that I had ever worked with paints, and and I worked with oils, and I loved it. So it's funny that you're talking about this, like, when I retire, maybe I'll come back to painting. I was never a particularly talented painter, but I have thought that many times. Maybe one day I'll come back to painting. And I loved the way that oils, I loved working. I liked the feel of them, the smell of them, the way that they moved and you push them around on a canvas. And watercolor is the like big mystery to me. It's like, wow, you really do need to know before you put the brush down on the paper what it is that you intend to do.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say, parents didn't want you to do it and you just had to find an outlet.
Yeah.
Because my, my first instrument of choice was I wanted to be a drummer. I saw Sheila E.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, that's what I want to do. And my mom, she was a big fan of Santana, and she had like a lot of Santana records, and those have a lot of like percussion, there's like congas and stuff, integral part of their vibe. But I said I want to play the drums, and I would drum on everything. I mean, you'd hear a coffee machine, or the washing machine, and there's a certain rhythm and a certain like sound. And I heard those sounds. I heard rhythms and stuff, and I like hit everything, and drove my mom crazy. And she said, "Absolutely, you're not playing drums. It's like too loud, too expensive." And so it became, the guitar instead.
Yeah.
But then over the years, it's funny because as I got into some journalism work, I was interviewing bands, and somehow I just got like extra good rapport with the drummers. If there ever were any drummers at the interviews, often it was like the singers or the lead guitarist. Yeah, it just felt like there's like a connection with the drummers. And funny, I ended up marrying one, and now I'm like learning how to play drums, and I like took the Sheila E. master class. Those like
That's
celebrities.
right. Yeah.
She's got one, and I was like, you know what? It's COVID. I've got time. I'm gonna do this. I'm not in any hurry because it released an album in October, and then having moved to Chicago, don't really have a band, and it's hard to meet people now and to meet people.
Yeah.
So it's like me and my husband. There's just half the band. So.
Right.
I've got some time on my hands, so I've been playing drums, and so it's like, whatever you wanted, even if people say no, it's going to come out somehow.
I totally feel that same way. I feel like, water finds its own level, and, those of
Yeah.
us who really are looking for our level, or our track, whatever kind of metaphor you want to use, but they're just certain kind of people. We will find it somehow. We will find it.
Yeah.
And it's really funny. Yeah, I went back, I studied music, and then later on I got a master's in creative writing and MFA, and it's like I eventually did those things that when I was younger, I just I think that there's like a healthy maybe skepticism that parents have to have.
Yeah.
How can they discern the difference between the seed of a true passion and then just something that's just a whim that a kid
Yeah.
has? And I think that's really difficult for a parent to figure out. But if it's the seed of the real passion, you know, at some point we've either got to plant that seed and grow it and nurture it and go in that direction, or I don't know, I feel like it just strangles us. We could just
Yeah.
choke on that.
Yeah, I think it's hard to ignore it. I mean, you could try, you could pretend, but it
Yeah.
will catch up eventually, I think.
Yeah.
Some kind of like inner restlessness or that,
Yeah. Well, speaking of Santana, you recently published a piece on Santana, right? Tell
Yeah.
us about that. How did that come about? And what
Oh
was that like for
gosh.
you?
Oh my God. It was so exciting. I mean, because he was the reason why. Yeah, okay, so my mom said no to drums, so I thought, well, okay, I'll pick up guitar then. I had, heard his music around the house, and at some point, like 15 or so, then I'm starting to hear those songs and some of those guitar solos in my head. I thought, okay, well, I better like check out the records. Like went in my mom's collection, put it on, and was like totally hooked. And so, soon as I got a guitar, my first guitar was a nylon string. So it was for my 16th birthday. And I just started to take lessons before then. And it was like acoustic guitar. My teacher was kind of like a folk / classical musician. Whatever Santana stuff I wanted to learn, I had to do that on my own. So I'd like sit with the records and just try to figure it out. And I remember, I mean, I'm having this nylon string guitar and thinking, how does he make the notes sound so long? And he's got an electric guitar and he's got this like crazy sustain, and that's kind of like one of his signature things. It's just this note that goes on and on and on and like rides over the music, all these frantic congas, and he's like, it just has a soaring sound. How does he do that? The amazing thing when you're young is that even if something is going to take you hours or days or months to learn, it doesn't deter you.
Yeah.
You just do it. And I wish that I had that kind of beginner's mind at this age, because now you're kind of like, too much. So if I look at a piece of music that inspires me, and if I want to learn it, because I'm going to learn some things from it, and it might, do something for my playing. It's just, I know so much. I know what it's going to take to like get into that. I know the hurdles. And when you're, 15 or 16, you're on step 2 and you don't care if what step 40 is. You're just like going to spend the time.
Yeah.
And I spent a lot of time learning Santana stuff, and to the point where my mom would like knock on the door and say, "Hey, come out for breakfast." No, and I'm like, and then lunch comes, and I'm like just blissfully unaware that it's 12 o'clock, and then I guess I come out and I grab a snack, and then get back in, and then it's dinner, and before you know it, it's bedtime, and all I've been doing is just playing, unless I had to go to school. So he made a huge, like, he was a huge influence for me. So it was amazing to get this opportunity to write for Guitar Player. I had written a couple of pieces for them already, but this was a new editor-in-chief. And there was a woman, a blues guitarist, her name is Sue Foley. And Sue had been writing a column for Guitar Player. And she was going to stop doing that because she was busy being an artist and wanted to move on and do other things. And so she, recommended me for this editor-in-chief and said, hey, if you want somebody to take over the column or something, then Nikki is, I recommend her. And I talked to the guy, and we decided not to do a column, but that I would work with him, in some other capacity. And he said, "What do you want to write?" And sorry, I get text messages coming up. Um,
Tell them to come watch the show.
Yeah, exactly. No, and so he said, "So what do you want to write?" And I thought, you know what, I'm just gonna like throw out impossible projects, just like the dream thing. So I said, well, there's Santana. It's the 50th anniversary of the Abraxas album, which is their classic album. And he said, "Yeah, you're right. You want to interview Carlos?" I was like, "Do I?" "Yeah, of course." And it took a little bit of finagling with the management, but finally, yeah, they agreed to it, and it was really crazy to 5 minutes before picking up the phone to call him, and then to hear his voice on the other end, and
What was that? What were those 5 minutes like for you before the call?
Oh my God, yeah. I thought I've interviewed a lot of artists. I mean, I'm not starstruck, uh, but this is somebody who like affected my playing and everything. I mean, it was also playing music. It was kind of a sanctuary for me because it was a little crazy with things going on at home. It was a bit turbulent. So music provided a sense of purpose and direction and community, a sense of belonging and identity, a way of expressing myself, a way to emote or to feel feelings where I had maybe through life like learned to become very detached and not get too excited, don't get too happy. So music allowed me to feel, and his music was very much a part of that. So that's a big piece of positive baggage to like before an interview. But yeah, it was great. We obviously we didn't have like a lot of time. Usually, it's a pretty limited amount of time. You have to get to the point. But I did get to tell him that, thank him for all the inspiration and stuff at the end of the interview. So that was very cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he was very gracious. And
so you learned guitar. You got your first guitar, that nylon string, at age 16, and you moved to Sweden at age 7.
Yeah.
So I find myself, as you're talking about this interview with Santana and how important music was, as it was helping you to emote, you said, and I'm just wondering, what is the same or what is different about learning Swedish and learning music?
Well, yeah, both are languages.
Exactly.
Both are languages. Wow, that's a really great question, because I often think about, especially because I teach guitar students, and some things that often can be intimidating for a lot of people is soloing and improvisation. And I'll have to say,
ding, ding, ding.
For me,
yes,
it's been a lot of hard work, because for me, I discovered that I was much more of a composer. Much like I'm songwriters are my tribe. So composition was always the thing that resonated with me, and improvisation was challenging. Well, the thing about learning a language, so you're thrown into it as a kid. You just have to start speaking, or, you just have to. So there's a very interesting book by a bassist named Victor Wooten, and he wrote a book called The Music Lesson. And it's a little bit of a kind of a little spiritual philosophy book about music. And he talks about when kids are, grow up, they're babies, they learn jamming, but with language, like from the get-go. they're jamming with their parents, with older siblings, with family members. And and then before you know it, you're talking, and you don't ponder too much on like, how am I forming these words? What letters am I? You're just doing it. And it's kind of the same thing with music. Unfortunately, unless we're born into a family of musicians, we don't really get that kind of relationship with learning music. So often it is, when we get a little bit older and we take music lessons, and it's like, okay, we got notes here, and now you're going to read this, and it's not the same like alive kind of thing. It becomes very brainy, very intellectual.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that, but
yeah, but it's just one piece of it. It's just one.
It's really just one piece of it.
I'm classically trained as a musician, and so I learned music from sheet music. And it took me a long time to recognize the fact that I had been learning music as a visual art form rather than as an oral art form. And that when I realized that was when I was in college. By then, that was when I got my first guitar and just wanted to learn music by listening. I was still in orchestras and chamber groups. I'm a classically trained woodwind player. Okay. And so I was still playing woodwinds, but and in those formal music settings, but guitar for me was very separate from it. Yeah. I love what you're saying about the improvisatory nature of spoken language and conversation. Have you read the book Free Play by Stephen Nachmanovich?
No.
He's a violinist, and I have it right here somewhere. Here it is. Improvisation in Life and Art, Free Play by Stephen Nachmanovich. And he talks about exactly what you're talking about with, we approach language, we have, this conversation right here is completely, like a jazz session. Well, yeah. Like we're just passing it back and forth, and it's like, okay, you solo now for 8 bars or whatever.
Right. There's no prepared questions. I didn't read them beforehand.
Yeah.
And
and he this whole book is sort of like, well, we do it already, so let's kind of look at that a little bit, and this definitely takes a spiritual approach. I'm very curious about that Victor Wooten book that you mentioned as well. Let's trade books. You read this one, I'll read that one.
Oh, sure. Yeah. It's very cool. It's not a real life thing, or maybe it is, I don't know, but it's basically Victor Wooten, or whoever the main character is, meets a man who just appears from out of nowhere. He just shows up in his room one day and starts teaching him about music. And he says, let's jam. And Victor Wooten picks up his bass and is like, what key should we be in? And he's like, key? What bullshit is that? Just get into it. And I'm not selling it very well, but it's basically this. So this mysterious person shows up, and he can play everything, and he can play really well, and he can really connect with audiences. They get to perform, and he's just this like master soloist that can like touch hearts, and how does he do it? And he kind of tries to teach the main character in the book, and they go over different elements of music, so rhythm, sound, harmony, timbre, and things like that. It's very cool.
Well, I'm intrigued.
Yeah,
I'm definitely intrigued. I wonder if there's so many good. I have a lot of pages turned down in this to share, but I've been wanting to remind myself of a particular quote. I wonder if I can find it real quick.
Yeah, I'm kind of tempted. I could like run down and grab the book, but
I know it's sort of a too bad actually that I have the quick access right here. I don't know where that quote is. Darn it.
It's okay. But yeah, I'd love to read that.
Yeah.
I think I'm very much I'm teaching a lot. I've taken a lot of lessons. I have this lesson channel in this company called TrueFire, and channel's called Twang Solo Rock and Roll. And it's basically you subscribe and there's like all these online lessons that I've filmed that touch upon various aspects of guitar playing, usually related to like twangy stuff and rhythm and blues and soul music, which is what I like that's very near and dear to me.
Yeah.
I love all kinds of music, but that's kind of like the focus. And I know the jargon with guitar, and I know like, yeah, well, the fretboard and our triads and vibrato and like all this talk, and sometimes I just want to break free from all of that, and I wish I, grew up in like some family in New Orleans and played in the in the parades or something, just learned music differently.
Yeah.
I mean, they obviously not gonna stereotype, because there's a lot of people in all cultures who read music, and I mean same kind of training as I've had, but I don't know, sometimes I just long for a different way of approaching music. And I think that's why with writing I kept it very sacred, where I didn't go to like a journalism school or writing program. I wanted to keep that like, yeah. And there's nothing wrong with getting instruction. I'm older now. I think I'd be more receptive to it. I wouldn't let it sway me.
It's sort of like how I started guitar. I think you're kind of talking about the same thing. Like I was trying to find a different approach to music.
Okay.
When I was on my in the orchestras and what am I trying to say?
Woodwind section. Yeah.
Chamber groups. I was so tethered to the page, and it's funny because music can free us, but then we have a way that we approach it and it becomes a cage, and then we're looking for the freedom, the feeling of freedom that we had, and how to, it's almost like when this is not an argument against learning, but
no, it's not for me either. There's nothing, because there are some people who think, oh, if I learn too much, then I will not become original. And no, I don't think it has anything to do with that. I mean, but when you're young, you may be very impressionable. It might like trap you a little bit. It depends who you are.
And then you have to figure out how to get out of that cage.
Right.
It's like you kind of put yourself in it, and then you got to figure out how to get out of it. So you're working on drums right now during COVID, which that's awesome. Does that are you getting that sense of freedom, or it's just such a totally different type of instrument from the frets and the strings of guitar. Totally different, but I've always been interested in rhythm. So with my guitar playing, I always like, for instance, I know a lot of people that would hate practicing with a metronome. I loved it. I thought it was like my one like percussion buddy, even if it was very static and only could do one thing. But I was happy practicing my funk rhythms and whatever, and using the metronome. So that must have like been an indicator that I was into that. And also with improvisation and soloing, I always feel the best guitarists in the world, no matter what style they are, they usually have a great sense of pocket and time. They don't just like noodle. There's space. There's just a good sense of rhythm, and rhythm is something that connects with people on a very primal level. So I've always been interested in that, but to actually like play a drum kit, it's super exciting. And I'm not using any books, not for right now. I might do it later, but my husband's a drummer, so he'll come in and I'll say, hey, teach me a funk beat. And he'll say, okay, do this on the bass drum and this on the snare drum. Okay. All right. And now add this. Okay. And then I can do it. All right. Now vary this. And it's really fun. And then he walks away, and then I start like varying stuff on my own. It's like having a bunch of building blocks. What can I do if I
open the hi-hat, or what if I like hit the tom, or and so it's really fun. It's like experimental, and
Yeah.
I need to get back to the guitar in the same way.
Yeah, totally. I love that.
Yeah.
Makes me think I was once married to a drummer. Now
Ah,
I'm now
okay.
I'm now I'm married to a bass player. But
Ah,
I but I was once married to a
both
drummer.
good to have.
Yeah, and I don't recall ever really sitting down at that drum kit when it was. I remember breaking my toe on my ex's drum kit, but I don't remember ever
Oh
actually
shit.
sitting down and playing. And I think that, sort of what you were saying about when I'm retired, I'll have that craft room, and I'll get back to my
Yeah.
watercolors. I think that there was a sense of, I want to sit down at the drums and learn, I don't know, just
Yeah.
play music, play
Yeah.
around. But there's always, I mean, time. It's like there's always so much to do. If I have time to sit down at the drums, shouldn't I be sitting down with my guitar and working on my
Yeah.
songs? Um,
No, I totally hear you.
and that's
Yeah.
it's like now we're in, like you said, you moved to Chicago. This isn't a time of history when it's easy to meet people. You've got half a band, but you can't meet other people, and you're probably,
Yeah.
you're teaching. I know you're teaching a lot, but you're not probably playing a lot of gigs. So now's the
No.
time. It's like
Now,
we have that
yeah.
time.
Yeah, and the thing is that back in LA, the drums were not in our apartment because nobody can have drums in their apartment. That's like that's the reality for drummers. It's you know, so we had a rehearsal space, and it wasn't that far away, but it was kind of like in a dingy area, and so if you felt the impulse of wanting to play drums, you had to like get in the car and like go, and drive,
Right.
and then once you're there, it was like, well, you better like come up with something.
Yeah,
Now
there's a lot of
like,
pressure at that
it
point.
became like more pressure, and I mean, I was happy doing it, but it was harder to do, and yeah, and there was like work and so much to do, but now this place that we're renting, it's constructed in a great way where it's kind of like almost like a townhome. We don't have any connecting walls, so we can play the drum kit if we use brushes, not sticks, because the whole neighborhood will hear it. But
Right.
but if you play brushes really quiet, we can do that, and it's been really fun. For my husband, he's been coming in, just doing little bursts of like creative, like what can I do, like just no preconceived anything.
Yeah.
And he's been practicing like soloing, just free form. And I've been practicing, whatever comes to me. And then this Sheila E. masterclass, which from an instructional point of view, it's maybe not the best as a teacher. I could be a little, well, if I was a total beginner in music, I'd probably find some of these things very confusing. But she does, but I don't think masterclass is like their main objective is to be like fantastic education. Like
I think it's supposed to be inspiration.
inspiration, exactly. And then
Right.
you get a little glimpse into somebody's
Yeah.
world.
Enough to like satisfy your curiosity and let you know if you want to go even further, and if
Yeah,
so,
yeah,
go somewhere beyond that. Yeah.
yeah. And some of those are really, really good. So, and I'm not going to diss Sheila E. There's some things that are very cool and that she's very good at explaining. But I think it's, for somebody who already plays music, I could kind of look at that and, oh yeah, that's cool. I get what she's doing. I'm going to run with it. And
Yeah.
so, but it's just been a lot of fun to, to approach music in that non-academic way.
Yeah.
And
I love that.
yeah.
Well, I'm wondering if this would be a good time for you to share. You've been kind of before the show. You were like, I don't know, I might share this book. I might share this other thing. Did you flip a coin? Did you decide?
I didn't flip a coin, but I just decided.
Okay, great.
Which is so
I'm,
difficult.
I'm. It's like the suspense is killing me. What
Yeah.
is it? What did you decide?
It's James Baldwin.
Beautiful.
I'm not an expert in his writing in any way. I've always been drawn to it, and I've been reading so much nonfiction in the last like 2 decades of my life, and also being a journalist. It's like I've really kind of I've been so much in that world, and it feels weird that I haven't read so much fiction. I used to read I mean, short stories and poems and novels, so much when I was in my teens and in my 20s. Um, I was doing this songwriting workshop with Joe Henry, and Joe Henry's a huge reader of books, and I asked him, what are some favorite writers of yours, and he mentioned James Baldwin, and I was like, yes, I like love his writing. And he encouraged all of us to read more literature and read poetry, and I feel like, for songwriting, it's easy for me to write music, but it's always been a bit of a struggle to write lyrics. And it's kind of weird because I write so much and professionally and everything. But it's journalism, and that's a different kind of writing. And I kind of need to connect with that more poetic way of writing.
There's something I feel I've been reading a lot of fiction during COVID, particularly.
Okay.
And I've read some, just books that have just changed my life. And sometimes, I love nonfiction and literary nonfiction, memoiristic nonfiction, and also
Yes.
Investigative journalism type of nonfiction. But there's something about fiction that I think can sometimes reveal truths on a deeper emotional level than nonfiction can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and connect emotionally, because it's kind of like with art. If the only art we had was realistic art, we're missing out on a lot that connect with your soul and your heart. And so with James Baldwin's writing, I think, I know he had a great love for music, and maybe that's what's appealing to me also. There's a lot of musicality in his language, and but it's also his metaphors and how he describes things. It's incredible, and I like that it's a little more direct. It's not overly flowery, which I think appeals to me. So,
he's not telling you how. He's telling you how it is, not how to feel about it, and he allows you to feel, to have a response to how it is. I think.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what you're going to share, so.
Well, it's a long poem, so I think that I'm gonna just share the last paragraph, which is kind of long, and the poem is called Munich, Winter 1973, and in parentheses it's 4YS. I'm just learning about Baldwin, so I don't know who YS is, your role he or she had in his life. But yeah, so this is Munich, Winter 1973. Just as the birds above our heads, circling or singing, knowing that in what lies before them, the always unknown passage, wind, water, air, the failing light, the failing night, the blinding sun, they must get the journey done. Listen. They have wings and voices, are making choices, are using what they have. They are aware that on long journeys, each bears the other, whirring, stirring, love occurring in the middle of the terrifying air.
I love all of the internal rhymes and play with language.
Yeah. Kind of reminds me a little of, now her name escapes me, but the young woman who read at Joe Biden's inauguration.
Yeah, Amanda Gorman. Yeah.
Yes. Because she was using a lot of internal rhymes, and I know that's a big part of hip hop also, and the lyricist there, but I wonder if you trace it back, if it goes back to him, and probably beyond James Baldwin, but.
I think there are some writers that when you read them, you know that they were speaking the words aloud, even if their work was intended to be read on the page, you can just tell that you're right. You use the word musicality before, and you know, you
Yeah.
can just tell that it's words, it's language not meant just to be seen with the eyes, but turned over in the mouth and heard
Yeah.
with the ears, you
I
know.
think maybe it is also because with songwriting, we, deal with, like, do the words sing, do the lines
Mm.
sing. There's that, especially if you're the one who's going to be singing
Yeah.
the stuff. So maybe that's also something that I'm resonating with. But yeah, I don't know again his history, so I think he did readings and things like that. So maybe that was part of his to read them out loud in public.
You know, I can't help but
Um,
think throughout all much of our conversation today, I just can't get the Swedish part out of my head. And as we're talking about literature, and you were talking about you know, when you were younger, and that you read a lot, and I just find questions constantly arising in my head. Did you read in Swedish? Did you read in English? Did you read in both? Have you ever
mm,
written a song in Swedish? Have you written any kind of
um,
work that blends the two languages? There's like, I find myself constantly asking, have you ever, just for play on the page, you know, allowed a word from any language, whichever language
yeah.
best expresses the word, to come to the pen and to the page? Have you ever done any of that?
Wow, it's so interesting because when again, like this class with Joe Henry, it was an online workshop, and I was, telling him that I don't have anything like, people would like prepare, like bring some songs or bring some lyrics, and it's like I don't have anything. I've just released an album and like finished the promotion cycle of it, so I'm kind of like emptied out
Yeah.
of songs, don't have any stuff laying around, but lyrics are a tough thing for me because I think, I know it's not like journalism. I want it to be poetic. And it's like setting the bar. It's like maybe I've set the bar so high
Mm.
that I'm making it difficult for myself. And he said, because he knew that I grew up in Sweden, said, have you ever tried to write a couple of lines in Swedish and then try to translate it into English later?
Mm.
So no, never thought of that. And so you should try it. So it's
Yeah.
interesting they say that. Uh, I've
Yeah.
written, when I was a kid, I wrote short stories. I made up stories all the time as a
In
kid.
Swedish or in
In
English?
Swedish, yeah, in Swedish. So I would read a writer in school, and then I'd be so inspired, and it was some epic story that we got to learn about, and then I try to write my own like epic story or horror stories or whatever. I loved making up stories, and I did that in Swedish. So I
Have you
should.
ever read the Swedish poet Thomas Tranströmer?
Oh, I love his stuff.
Yeah, I do
Love his
too,
work.
but I've never obviously read his stuff in the original Swedish. I
And
can only read his stuff through translation.
and I've never read his English translations. But how cool that you mentioned him, because I haven't thought about him in a long time, and that he's a poet that I really like as well.
Mm.
So thank you for that. I gotta get back to him.
I wonder if you were to. So he has a poem called The Blue House. Cheryl Strayed, the writer of Wild and Tiny Beautiful Things, she has an essay, or I call them essays, but Tiny Beautiful Things is really a collection of advice column pieces that she wrote. And one of
Okay.
them is called Ghost Ships. And that one is based off of his poem Blue House. And I wrote a song called Ghost Ships based on her essay and
Oh,
his
how
poem
cool.
Blue House. And I wonder what would happen if you were to read some of him in the
Yeah.
original Swedish and then write a song in English, or just
Oh, thank
something.
you.
There's something about that.
Yeah, I would love that. Thank you. I feel like this is like like in the artist's way.
Mm,
Julia Cameron, she talks about synchronicity and
mm,
how are these interesting coincidences that happen, and it seems to me like I need to explore this because now
yeah.
there's two writers that are bringing
I
this up.
I hope that if you do explore that, that you will, somehow either if you write something and record it, post it publicly, tag me, or just send
Oh,
it to me,
sure.
send me a text or a message, and I'm so
Absolutely.
curious. I would love that.
You know, there's one thing that's really interesting that I told Joe, and that is that when I speak Swedish or Polish, because my mom was Polish, so I grew
Yeah.
up learning the language. My Polish isn't very good though, so I can't write and I can barely read. But when I speak Swedish or Polish or English, my personality changes a bit because it's like the whole culture comes along with it and the sense of humor, the irony, the like indirect stuff that people hint or
That would
yeah,
be really amazing then, to go back to the songwriting piece of it, to see
yeah,
what part of your personality emerges
the
that
taps
is
into.
normally. What can you describe in English, what your personality is in English versus Swedish versus Polish?
I that's a good question. I know it's really hard to describe the Swedish one. I have to speak it, but it's like I just bring my upbringing and everything I watched on TV and humor and the slang words. And so maybe it depends who I speak to. It has to probably be somebody who's the same age as me.
Hmm.
If I talk to somebody who's in their 20s and I use slang, they'll probably shake their heads and like, what? Yeah. But with Polish, I tend to be louder and I use my hands more. And it's like, ah!
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love it.
And get more, like, less diplomatic. Because, yeah, I'm like, usually people tell me that I'm pretty polite. And, like, yeah, even as a journalist, they're like, artists who I interviewed, they're like, you're very polite. You're like unusually polite. Um, and but with Polish, maybe it's because it's my mom. It's like the Polish people I grew up with. It's my mom and my grandmother. And my mom was kind of a strong personality, very type A. She walked into a room and just took it over, and was very stylish. Um, I'm like a tomboy compared to her. I think she probably felt like she got a son when she got me. But she was very like feminine. She wore perfume, strong perfume, and colorful clothes, high heels, makeup, and very very different from me. But there's something about her personality, and she would every weekend. She and my grandmother, they would sit at the kitchen table, and they both smoked. So they had their cigarettes, and this ashtray is like piling up with more and more of these Marlboro cigarettes,
Mm.
and and then there's black coffee, and they have this radio that and this is in Sweden, but they have this radio, and if you move the antenna in a certain direction, it would pick up a station in Poland that played Chopin and like classical music.
Oh,
It was like, I think it was like Polish public radio, but Chopin was like kind of like the theme song. So dun da dun da 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 dun da da, and so that was like every Saturday, and they're smoking, and then they have this thing that's a little bit like superstitious. So they had a deck of cards, and they would tell each other's fortune. So they would like, depending on whatever your cards are on the table. There's like they have different meanings, and so they sit there with their cigarette and like tell each other's fortune.
oh my gosh.
And I would come up to them when I was young, and I'm hearing Chopin, and I'm like, "Can you tell my fortune?" They're like, "No, you're too young."
I seriously feel like you just wrote a song with that story. All you need to do is put chords and melody to it.
Yeah, I
Oh
do
my
need
gosh,
to.
I love it.
Do need to tap into it, and I've thought about it. It's there's so many stories on like my mom's side of the family, my dad's side. There's been a lot of mystery around both of them because they kind of, because of various circumstances in their lives. My grandmother, it's like war, fleeing Russian Revolution, so it's like a lot of family disappears. There's World War II. My grandmother was taken away from the Germans and sent to work in a factory as a Polish woman, and so she never saw her family again. So I don't know much about my mom's side of the family, and there's just these stories that they would tell. And of course, there's the stories that I witnessed, and then my dad has been even more of a mystery. But in the last 2 months, thanks to doing these like DNA websites, Ancestry.com, 23andMe, I thought, well, I'm curious what my ancestry is, so I did 23andMe, and it came back and it showed, well, yeah, you got half of it is Irish, British, and the other half is Eastern European, and then sometimes you get emails from these companies, and like with 23andMe, they'll say, okay, congratulations, you've got 20 new DNA relatives. I was like, well, what does that mean? It's like people that have relatives that are born in the same part of the world of you. That's like millions. So what does that mean? But in December, somebody contacted me who said, I think that we have relatives in common. I think I'm your second cousin. And I was like, you know what? I wish I could help you, but I have no information. I have nothing. I have nothing. And he persisted. He was like, no, and he started like showing family tree and things like that. And then he mentioned another woman who he was related to. Well, she's like created this big family tree on Ancestry.com. You should join it and see for yourself. And then both of them contacted me, and in February, I said, well, I came upon my parents' marriage certificate. So there's not a lot of info here, but there's like, my dad's mother and father and, date of birth and, here you go. And in February, they got back to me and they had connections that pointed to my mom and my grandmother and my dad. And I knew this is accurate. And
Wow.
so all of a sudden, from not knowing anything, there's, suddenly I know about my dad's mother, who was a dancer during Prohibition. She danced in the jazz clubs in New York.
Rock on.
And yeah, and she, unfortunately, got married to somebody who had like gangster connections or mob connections or something. So she got pregnant with my dad and he disappeared or got killed. And then she died of tuberculosis at age 24.
Wow.
So, but she's like one artistic person in the family, and then there's another one in like early 1800s, a musician in England. And so that has been really fascinating to learn about this. So I just signed up to take a memoir workshop, and it's going to start next week. And I think it'll just help me because there's so many stories.
Yeah.
So
oh my gosh, there's so many like little threads and seeds.
There's so many little threads, and I'm thinking, even if it's not a memoir, it'd be cool to do short stories or something, to maybe take it in a more fiction direction or something, and hopefully some songs will come out of it. It just right now the subject is very big. Yeah. And usually when a subject is huge, then it's like daunting. So it feels like the best approach is to just take something really, really small. Yeah. And like the story I just told you with, my mom and grandmother smoking and telling each other's fortune and using that radio. The writer
Anne Lamott, are you familiar with her book Bird by Bird?
No, I'm not.
But that's what the title comes from. I won't tell the story that goes along with it, but her dad basically says, just take it bird by bird. It's too much to try to describe the whole thing, to tell, you can't.
Take it bird by bird.
Bird by bird, right?
Wow. That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. But there to just, you asked me long ago, like, how am I different when I speak a different language?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's I witnessed my mom and my grandmother, and yeah,
So awesome. Oh
yeah.
my gosh. I feel like I could talk with you about this now for a really long time because
I would love it. We have to talk about books and yeah,
yes,
writing and
all of
so
that, all of
fun.
that. So I will just share a really short paragraph because as I told you before, the Overstory by Richard Powers. I just finished it. I've been sharing it the last couple of weeks. This is a book where the center of the book, how do I say it? Rather than human, I mean, it is a story about characters. They're humans, but really trees are the center of the book.
Okay. Oh, and
And
trees, they're the most beautiful form there is. I love.
you will love this book then.
Okay.
It's a phenomenal epic story that starts with a feeling of short stories. The first third of the book, starting with a tree, chestnut, mulberry, maple, whatever, and then into characters. And so the first third of the book, you're kind of getting a portrait of these, I think, 6 different characters. And then about after that part, their lives start to converge and
Interesting.
everything starts to grow together. I suppose he did that much the way that trees under the soil, they seek out each other's roots and the roots connect. And actually, you mentioned family trees, and so maybe that relates as well.
When is that book from?
It was published, I think, last year, 2 years
Oh,
ago,
okay. Okay.
2018.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I recommend it.
Very cool.
And I'm gonna just share this last little bit, and then I'll be on to another book next week. So this is so this is a paragraph that is in this book, but it's a paragraph from another book that one of the writers wrote. It's a I think I just dug myself into a hole by even telling you that much.
That's okay.
One of the characters is a scientist and a writer, so she has written a few books, and so this is actually from her book
Okay.
within the book.
I'm following.
So the Greeks had a word, xenia, guest friendship, a command to take care of traveling strangers, to open your door to whoever is out there, because anyone passing by far from home might be God. Ovid tells the story of 2 immortals who come to Earth in disguise to cleanse the sickened world. No one would let them in, but one old couple, Bacchus and Philemon. And their reward for opening their door to strangers was to live on after death as trees, an oak and a linden, huge and gracious and intertwined. What we care for, we will grow to resemble. And what we resemble will hold us when we are ourselves no longer. So I wanted to read it for that one line. What we care for, we will grow to resemble.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, as they say, somebody else said, it was a yoga teacher, said, you get more of what you put your energy into.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
I write in my journal every day. I have like a regular journaling practice, and one of the things I write every day is
I've been doing that as well.
Where your focus goes, your energy flows. And so
that's really good.
and I just remind myself, I'm like, I have to just write that every day and write down these couple of few things that I want
I'm
my
gonna write that
focus
down.
to be.
Where your focus goes. That's great.
Yeah, there are a couple of different ways to say it, but that's the one that I have finally started to say in my journal. Nikki, this has been such an awesome conversation. I think we need to play a little music now, shall we?
Sure.
Yeah.
So, do you want me to start?
Yeah, go for it. Play us a song, and then I'll play a song, and then we'll just take it out.
Okay.
But oh my gosh, I just want to keep talking about.
I know. And you got
That's
me,
a good
like,
sign.
And yeah, you got me like just reigniting this love for literature, and I'm so thankful and really happy about it.
Yay!
So,
That's awesome.
this song, so this is off of my album World is Waiting, and this is the last song where I just like now, just sing and play acoustic guitar, and I recorded it at Royal Studios in Memphis, which is where Al Green did his classic albums. And when I walked into that room, it is like getting into a time capsule of 1973. And everything's orange, and there's plywood, and there's shag carpets in red and orange, and gold records with Al Green and Ann Peebles, and it's a fantastic place. And when the owner of the studio, Boo Mitchell, son of Willie Mitchell, and he's a really great producer in his own right, but when he started pulling out the mics and setting up the recording, it dawned upon me what room I was in and all the talent that had come through there. So I got a little nervous, but I managed to calm myself down. But maybe some of that electricity was captured in that recording. But anyway, this song is called "Take Back What I Said," and I wrote the music, and Paul Menser wrote the lyrics. Before I even knew it, it was already done. Facing a reality from which I couldn't run. Now I sit and wonder why there isn't any way that I can take back what I said to get you back again. A careless word in anger, thoughtless as I was, I would not apologize. No reason, just because. But when you shut down on me, then I wanted desperately to take back what I said and get you back again. I know I was tempting fate. Now I hope it's not too late to swallow all my pride. Please don't send me on my way, 'cause there's no price that I won't pay to heal the hurt inside. Baby, I'll do anything if it'll make you see I was wrong to make you cry. That's not really me. I can't change, I know it's true, and the least that I can do is take back what I said and get you back again. Get you back again. Get you back again.
I love it. I was over here singing harmonies with you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I love all the little licks in between. It just has such a great vibe.
Thank you. Thank you.
Huh. I guess I'll just take it out with this song. This is a new one. I have not played it live before.
Oh, cool. I was debating if I should do a brand new song because I do have one, but I wrote it 2 years ago, but I haven't recorded it. But okay, so you got a new song.
So,
Exciting!
so a couple of weeks ago, a songwriting friend of mine, she is in a group where there are 21 women. Seven of them are visual artists, and the rest are all songwriters. And every week has a prompt, and three each. Everybody is assigned a day, and so every day there are three new creations, song or visual,
Oh, how
that are
cool.
posted onto the Instagram. It's called Real Women, Real Songs. So my friend is in this group, and she and I were talking, and she said, well, if you want, I'll share the prompts with you, and you and I can just do an accountability thing
Awesome.
together. And so I was like, okay, yes, that's exactly what I would love to do. I love the, there's something about that pressure.
I love prompts.
Yeah, and I love and hate prompts. Okay, so
I
this song was the first one last week. She said the prompt was magazine, and I let it marinate a couple of days, and I think it was last Wednesday I found myself here in the shed thinking, oh, what am I gonna write for this song magazine? Meanwhile, I'm answering emails, I'm doing some work, and I somehow got distracted by an article in Time magazine online about an asteroid. And then my husband came into the shed to tell me something, and I said, oh, by the way, there's an asteroid that is going to be coming incredibly close to Earth on Friday the 13th in April of 2029, and
Wow.
and I'm a little bit concerned about it because nothing has come this close, and it's pretty big. And I'm thinking we should dig a cellar or something like that. And he looked at me and he was like, this is our big chance. Like, we could build a rocket and launch ourselves onto the asteroid and get off of this planet.
Oh my God.
And then he walked away, and I thought back to my songwriting prompt. I'm like, oh, what am I going to write for that song about magazine? And I was like, oh, here we go. So this song is called Asteroids and Chaos.
Awesome.
So let's see. There we go. I'm nervous. Here we go.
Don't be.
Get over it, Arielle.
Yeah, no, I know, but yeah.
An asteroid is coming. I read it in a magazine. It's gonna come incredibly close. Tall as the Empire State Building, chaos on the doorstep. I tell you we should hide, stockpile jars of jelly. Clean the sleeping bag, stock up on wine. You say this could be our big chance. Hot glue and cardboard boxes, together we can build a rocket, and we can launch a rocket to the sky. Or we can dig a cellar to hide in. Maybe we could strike a balance, unroll the hammock, hold each other through the panic. Maybe it's a profit with a prize. Hark the herald angels singing when the rocking of the cosmos sways us. Love will save us from asteroids and chaos. Asteroids and chaos. The pasta shelves are empty. There's panic on the news. I'm crying in the front yard, thinking about everything we'll lose. I hear music from the house. You swing the windows open wide, raise two crystal glasses. Say today you're pouring the good wine. You say this could be our last dance. So let's not waste a minute. If I get one wish, baby, you're it. And we can launch a rocket to the sky. Or we can dig a cellar to hide in. Or maybe we could strike a balance, unroll the hammock, hold each other through the panic. Maybe it's a profit with a price. Hark the herald angels singing when the rocking of the cosmos sways us. Love will save us from asteroids and chaos. While we're alone together, I know what might make us feel better. We can launch a rocket to the sky, or we can dig a cellar to hide in. Maybe we could strike a balance, unroll the hammock, hold each other through the panic. Maybe it's a profit with a prize. Hark the herald angels singing when the rocking of the cosmos sways us. Love will save us from asteroids and chaos. Asteroids and chaos. Asteroids and chaos. Ooh, 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 ooh.
Oh man, that's beautiful. That's really beautiful. I love your
Thank
voice, and I heard that you took a break from songwriting, and you're back into that, and I'm so glad that you are.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I took about a little more than my third album came out in 2006, and my fourth album came out in 2020. So
Wow.
that gives you a sense of the break.
Yeah, wow. No, and great words, great lyrics, and yes, song melodies, everything.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was funny when I was talking about the asteroid with my husband, and then he walked away. I was like, yeah, we're in a pandemic now.
I heard the pasta on the shelves. The pasta shelves are empty.
Yeah, and I was like, that's really interesting that, the human capacity to be fearful of the future is it's just amazing how how we can be in the middle of a pandemic and I'm worried about an asteroid in
2029.
Yeah, exactly. So, Nikki, this has been so enjoyable.
Likewise.
It is just really lovely to have. We've never talked before, and we have just. I feel like we could just keep talking for ages. So this has been really fun. Thank you so much for being a great guest.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's
Yeah.
very cool. Hope to keep in touch.
We will. We definitely will. These conversations are not over.
Awesome.
I'm curious what's going to come of your Transtromer dive.
Yes, I'm gonna check it out now. Actually.
All right, and I will see you backstage, and I will say goodbye to everybody here. Thank you so much for joining me today for Tomes and Tunes. Nikki O'Neill, I love her new album, so please find it it's on all the streaming platforms, and follow her in all of the places. Thank you for listening to us, and I will be here next week, same time, same place, with John Zipper. I see you in the chat box, and I am so excited to have John on as my guest for next week, episode 42 of Tomes and Tunes. I hope that you have a wonderful week, and be safe, stay sound, take good care of yourself and the ones you love. I will see you next week. Bye-bye.